9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 I think is a fair grade, just because, again, the Williams could potentially be even higher. Maybe save a 10 grade for that, maybe a P8 or a P9 or even higher. You never know if Williams are indeed in the midfield mix. It was a great performance from Albon. Unlucky in qualifying.
We'll stick with a 9. I think, yeah, 1 point.
We need some room for improvement, right?
Nick de Vries started 19th, finished 14th. I was a little bit underwhelmed by Nick de Vries' performance this weekend. He doesn't want to be seen as a rookie, so I'm not going to call him that. He's had a race already under his belt. It's his second race in Formula One, but qualifying really let him down. And then finished 14th, finished a lap down. Tsunoda wasn't a lap down, was the actual last car not to get lapped by Max Verstappen, and Nick de Vries getting beaten by the likes of Logan Sargent, I don't think's a particularly, or worthy of a particularly good grade for me. So I'm going to go with a straight down the middle 5 out of 10 for Nick de Vries.
Okay, yeah, Nick de Vries actually had he kind of got screwed a little bit by the virtual safety car at the end of the race, but I mean, he still was behind Sargent at this point, so it's not like he would have got points or anything. They took a gamble and it didn't work. I will go for a 4 for Nick de Vries, just because I kind of felt like he'd be a lot more on pace with Tsunoda, particularly qualifying. He was way off. Big surprise to see him essentially last, if you don't count Gasly, who had his lap time deleted and then dropped to the back. He really didn't look on Tsunoda's level, which surprised me a lot. So I'm going to give him a 4.
I guess taking into account slightly with his lack of experience, that's why I was a bit more lenient with the 5 out of 10. We now move to his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda. Started 14th, finished 11th. I think Tsunoda, considering that AlphaTauri doesn't look that great, did a pretty good job this weekend. Of course, out-qualifying his teammates, just missing out on the points by 1.1 seconds from Alex Albon ahead. I don't think it really set the world alight, Tsunoda's performance, but at the same time, he has to get a higher grade than de Vries, in my opinion, so I'm going to give him a 6.
Yeah, he was unlucky not to maybe get into Q3, but he ran out of soft tyres, because he put in a really good performance, didn't he, in Q1? Was he up in 8th or something like that? Where Nick de Vries was...
Don't act like you don't know this, you Yuki fanboy. Was he up in 8th with, 4
I think he was up in 8th, way ahead of his teammate. Yeah, but then couldn't do the lap. And he was unlucky not to get a point, but he just couldn't pass Alex Albon. It looks like that Williams, again, is just absolute legend on the old straight line speed. And Tsunoda, I'm going to go for a 7.
Wow, okay.
Because I think if you look at how bad de Vries did and how well Tsunoda did compared to him, I think he's unlucky not to have 7 not points. But the AlphaTauri does look terrible. It's quite difficult to grade at the moment, because we don't know how good cars are until we kind of see like 4 or 5 races. But the Tsunoda fanboy in me is just going to give him a 7 and screw off.
Okay, cool. So 6.5 average for Tsunoda then. We now go to Nico Hülkenberg. Started 10th, finished 15th, and got a penalty for track limits, and yeeted his front wing off with K-Mag-esque driving at the start of the race. This is going to have to be, I'm so sorry, Nico, but this is not what Haas signed up for. It was slightly unlucky, but it's still not what they need. If Hülkenberg is qualifying in the top 10, getting into Q3, he has to score some points. He didn't do that, so for me, it's a 2 out of 10.
Ouch. Yeah, I feel like Hülkenberg here has basically done the opposite to Logie Sarge, and how I underrated him and he did well. And now with Hülkenberg, my whole narrative of, biggest surprise, and he's the safe pair of hands that will bag you big points, and then he becomes K-Mag and takes his front wing off at turn 1 and has track limit penalties. Not great for Hülkenberg. Unexpected for a driver of him, because he was looking great in qualifying and then didn't actually do a lap, I don't believe it, in the Q3. I'll go for a 3 just because his qualifying was a bit better, but shocking from Hulk really when has to need those points, because they looked decent.
It certainly did. I think Nico, yeah. As we now turn our attention to Kevin Magnussen. He started 17th, finished 13th. Just an underwhelming race, really. Again, like Magnussen, you'd expect maybe there's some kind of pace there in that Haas for him to unlock it, but perhaps that Q1 exit really just gave him a bit too much work to do in the race. So for me, he didn't get a meatball flag, so that is an extra point right there. It's going to be a 4 out of 10 for me for K-Mag.
I'm going to go for 4 as well. It's just an underwhelming performance, especially the heights of last year. Just didn't look quick, which is a surprise when Hulkenberg did look quick in qualifying and then he had the messy race. But you look at where he finished 13th, you know, behind Sargent, behind Zhou Guanyu, his teammate. So basically, he only beat the cars that either pitted near the end for fastest lap or had an absolute mare. So not good from K-Mag.
We now go to a pacey set of drivers in the Aston Martin crew. Lance Stroll. He started 8th and finished the race in 6th. This grade could have been very different. I still back the fact that I don't think he was ready to race this weekend, just because he had some decent pace, and also the fact that he finished in 6th, I don't think, in wheel-to-wheel action. I mean, we saw when he nearly crashed into Alonso and his steering wheel kind of like flung about, that he actually lost grip with his hurting wrist. And that kind of stuff shows that he just wasn't ready for wheel-to-wheel combat. That being said, though, he did a fantastic job when he wasn't going wheel-to-wheel with anyone, and his pace was really good. And finishing 6th, ahead of one of the Mercedes, in the current condition that he's in, and also not having any F1 testing, it was clearly the right decision overall. Either or, Stroll drove well. It's going to be an 8 out of 10.
This is the grade. This could have been a 10 out of 10 or a 0 if he'd hit the brakes ever so slightly later. The fine margins of F1. I'm going to go for a 9, just because I think what he did with his injuries, I think, was really impressive. I don't think he would get that grade normally for where he finished, because obviously he's behind Alonso. That guy's in a lot of pain. How on earth has he managed to get P6 there? Yeah, 6 seconds off being P4 when you can't even put your hands on your hips. Good drive from Stroll.
Fernando Alonso started 5th, finished 3rd. I have a feeling I know what number's coming out of Tom Bellingham's mouth. But I'm going to give it a 9. You know, Alonso didn't have the best of starts. Obviously, part of that was due to his teammate giving him a nice little nudge. But on the other side, of course, Alonso's pace was really, really good. I think as well, you know, the fact that he pulled a move like that on Hamilton can't be ignored. I don't know, I feel like the start of the race maybe just takes away from the potential of a 10, because if he'd got through the field quicker, who knows, he could have been fighting Leclerc a lot earlier. Obviously, we're taking into account he's got a podium, but that's because Leclerc DNF'd. If it was a 4th, I don't think I'd be able to give him a 10 either. It's a very close to a 10, but I don't think I can give it 9.
I agree with you to a point, but my brain cannot give him anything other than a 10. Or my heart, I guess. This makes no sense, because realistically, I should be saving that 10. Like we mentioned with Albon earlier, that there's more room here for him to improve, because that Aston does look genuinely good. So it's not like he's a midfielder anymore where podium 10, but just for what he did in his racecraft, and actually seeing him again being at the front and racing people at the front and showing that he still has it at 41 years old to pull off that move on Hamilton is just absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, another fanboy rating from me, it's a 10.
Valtteri Bottas is our next driver. Started 12th, finished 8th. I'm actually going to give him, I was going to give him that grade, but no, delete it. I'm giving him a 9 out of 10. I feel like he had a fantastic race. His undercut at the start got him right in the mix of the likes of Russell and I think it was Stroll as well. Bottas just came out of nowhere. Finishing 8th, I think Bottas just had a brilliant race in an Alfa Romeo that I am not convinced is actually very good. So yeah, Bottas outperforming the car, even looking like he a little bit racy. I was like, come on, Valtteri, what are you saying, big boy? So yeah, good stuff.
Amazing stuff. Looking very good. Another driver that's proving that I'm washed and don't know wheel. Yeah, it's a very good performance, but I'll give it a 8 because I think he could potentially even finish higher, but the Alfa Romeo doesn't look amazing, but it was a great performance. But if he carries on like that, I could see Bottas being in the mix for like top of the midfield. Realistically, he should not have been anywhere near racing those Mercedes and Aston Martin. So how on earth he was ahead of them at one point during the race? Fair play to him. And I'm now trying to almost convince myself that it should be a 9. Yeah, 9.
He had a great start to the race. He really thrust himself into contention right at the start. So.
No, actually, I'm going to go for 9. Now I'm talking about how the fact that he was somehow racing the Astons and Mercs at one point it's very impressive.
Well done, Bottas. 9 out of 10 from both of us. We now go to Zhou Guanyu. Started 13th, finished 16th, went for fastest lap, got it. Apart from that, do you have much more to say about his race? Was there anything that went particularly wrong, or was it just didn't go to plan?
It's a weird one. I feel like this happened a lot last year. You just kind of blink and he's 16th and you don't really understand why. He looked like he was on the pace in qualifying with Bottas, absolutely no problem, but for some reason his race pace is not there.
All right, I'm going to go with a 4 out of 10 for me.
I'm going to go for a 4 out of 10 as well.
4 out of 10 then. We now go to Oscar Piastri. Started 18th, didn't finish. Probably the worst start to a Formula One career that you can possibly wish for if you're Oscar Piastri. Absolutely nowhere in qualifying, which was a shame for him. Had every problem under the sun with his car, and then it was done. The wheel came off and they tried to change that, and there's a loading screen on it, and you're wondering, is Oscar just going to go out there just to try and get some sort of mileage in the car? Nope. So it's very hard to judge this one, but I still think he wasn't anywhere near as good as I was maybe hoping he would be in comparison to Lando. So I am going to give him a 2.
I think I'll go for a 3 just because I think there was one point where I saw him make one overtake before his car went kaput. So it would have been nice to see what he could have done. Yeah, what a stinker of a debut.
Okay, we now move to Lando Norris. Started 11th, finished 17th because his car was just breaking. He had to come in, he had 6 stops. I think he was still doing a pretty good job with his car, considering where that McLaren is. It's probably the hardest driver to judge for a rating, just purely because every time he was making any kind of progress, he was then back in the pits. I'll give him a 6 out of 10, just purely because it's very difficult to grade, but I feel like he was getting the most of that McLaren when he was allowed to get the most out of that McLaren, which wasn't very often.
I think a 6 out of 10 is a fair grade, just because it wasn't his fault what went wrong. You can only really judge him on qualifying. You could argue that McLaren shouldn't have really been 11th when they looked like one of the slowest cars in the whole field, which is mad to say. So yeah, a 6 out of 10.
Pierre Gasly started 20th, finished 9th. And he also gets a 9 out of 10 from me. You know, to start at the back of the grid in an Alpine that isn't necessarily the kind of level that they were last year. It seems like they're slightly off that when we're comparing them to the rest of the midfield cars. To gain 11 positions is quite phenomenal, and could have easily finished 8th as well, just behind Bottas. So 9 out of 10.
This is probably going to be the only grade that we disagree on by a little bit more of a margin. I'm going to go for a 7 out of 10, just because I am not one of these people that gets particularly hyped by someone having an absolute stinker in qualifying and then finishing where they probably should be anyway.
Wow!
Yeah.
That's savage!
I mean, he was the worst driver in qualifying by quite a long way, and then if you look where he actually finished, he beat a Williams in an Alpine, so well done.
We now move to Pierre Gasly's teammate, Esteban Ocon. Started 9th, didn't finish. This is the easiest one I've ever given in my entire life. What an absolute stinker of a race. Parked incorrectly in his grid box, got a penalty for that. Came into to serve his penalty, didn't serve it properly, and then sped in the pit lane whilst he was trying to do that. He has equalled the most amount of penalties in a race ever, and it just didn't go well for him, did it really? Like, the fact is, that's his mistake about the grid box. That's his mistake for speeding in the pit lane. Maybe not his mistake on not serving the time penalty properly. That's probably more on the team. It's still a 1. I'm so sorry.
So this may surprise you, but because he beat Gaz in qualifying, I've gone for an 8. No, I haven't really. It's a 1 out of 10.
Panic then.
I thought, is 1 too harsh? But then, realistically, is any driver ever going to have a race that bad? You kind of have to disregard. I don't think there will ever be a race this year where someone has it this bad, really, because, like you say, it's 2 mistakes. He's equaled a Pastor Maldonado record, which is never a good thing unless it's getting a random one-off win. So yeah, Ocon, it's got to be a 1 out of 10. Shocking, cursed by Matt Gallagher from the predictions video.
Yeah, sorry about that, Esti Bestie. I really do feel bad predicting that he'd have a stinker and have absolutely no reason to believe that other than vibes. That's all I went off of. But yes, 1 out of 10 for Ocon. We now go to Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton started 7th, finished 5th. Hamilton finished 51 seconds off of Max Verstappen. P5, for me, it's a 7 out of 10. I think that he beat his teammate George Russell. Not the best qualifying from Hamilton ever, but he beat Russell in the race. He was there or thereabouts with Carlos Sainz, and I feel like he was doing about as much as he could do. They're just lacking. They're just lacking in that department. I can't in my brain give him any more than a 7 out of 10 because he's in a Mercedes, but realistically when you actually measure it, that might just be where the Mercedes can get and no more. So for me it's a 7.
Another reason I couldn't give him an 8, I'll go for 7 as well, is that I think he could have got past Sainz if he'd been a bit braver. He looked at one point like he was all over the back of him, but just needed to maybe be a bit more daring. But we've said this so many times with Hamilton that particularly in his later years of his career, that's not how he drives, and that has in the past what's won him championships and got him great points finish, because he kind of balances risk versus reward.
George Russell started 6th, finished 7th. So ended up getting beaten by Lance Stroll by 1.3 seconds. He only finished 5 seconds off Hamilton, so realistically, it's not far off his teammate. So that's why I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10, just purely because the pace differential between the two was not far. Stroll slotted in between them, but yeah, Russell didn't have much worse of a race than what Hamilton had, and just finished 5 seconds back. So that's a point loss. I don't think I can go any lower than 6.
Yeah, 6 is a fair grade. Just a little bit worse than Hamilton. Not really much more to say about his race other than, yeah, had a decent battle with Stroll, but I think 6 out of 10 is a fair grade.
Carlos Sainz started 4th, finished 4th. I was not very whelmed by Carlos Sainz's performance. Very underwhelmed, in fact. He wasn't really anywhere near Leclerc in race pace. Fell away very quickly from where Charles was, and if anything, was coming under threat from Hamilton. And I just feel as though Sainz, for whatever reason, just doesn't enjoy Bahrain, doesn't enjoy the fact that he has to really manage the tyres. He finished 4th, started 4th. It's going to have to be a 6, I think. Very nearly a 5. I just wasn't particularly impressed by his lack of speed compared to his teammate.
I think a lot of people will see that finishing P4, qualifying P4, sounds quite harsh to give him a 6, but this is the thing. If you look at Russell and you have to compare what machinery he's got, we've given Russell a 6 for kind of being off his teammate, and I'd argue that Sainz is even further behind his teammate than Russell was. But I think a 6 is a fair grade. I was really disappointed by Sainz, actually, because the end of last year, maybe it's just a Bahrain thing, but end of last year it looked like he was finally being a little bit closer to Leclerc, and then this gave me deja vu from early in last season where you were thinking, how is Leclerc battling Perez for P2 and Sainz is way back and falling into the traps of the Mercedes and the Aston Martins, which shouldn't have been happening. So yeah, I think a 6 for Sainz, and I really hope this is just a one-off, because I thought he would get to grips with the Ferrari by now.
Charles Leclerc started 3rd, didn't finish. I was hoping I wouldn't have to do one of these in the first race of the season. He was actually having a very good race considering where that Ferrari is, quite far off Red Bull. Leclerc couldn't even keep Perez behind after getting a great start. I think for me it's going to have to be an 8. I'm maybe thinking 9, but then I might think that may well just be passion talking rather than anything else. I think it was a solid race from Charles Leclerc up until the point of his car blowing up. He couldn't do any more than 3rd place. He deserved that podium. He was robbed, but Fernando Alonso is a small consolation for Charles Leclerc retiring. And I mean a very small consolation. God, I wish he'd finished the race. But here we are, DNF, but an 8 out of 10.
I'll be the fanboy then and give him a 9 out of 10.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Because, yeah, I think Leclerc drove very well. If he'd have finished that race, it's difficult because Alonso would have closed in, definitely. And Leclerc, we all know that the Ferrari struggle on their tyres, but how Leclerc was actually racing Sergio Perez with the deficit that it seems that Red Bull and Ferrari have. Yeah, I think a 9 out of 10 for Leclerc.
Sergio Perez started second, finished second. It was just chill for him. He obviously lost the position to Charles at the start, but realistically, I think he and Red Bull knew that all they had to do was bide their time with the strategy. Yeah, it was a solid enough drive from Perez. I don't think Verstappen or Perez were really pushing that hard, to be honest with you, for most of that race. So for me, 8 out of 10 for Checo. I think he did a solid job, finished second. He started second as well. I don't think there was much more you could really ask of the Red Bull number 2.
He's a difficult one to grade, and I think he will, as long as Red Bull are quick, he'll always divide people where he should be, because a lot of people will probably go, oh, how can, he should get a 9 out of 10 for finishing second, and then there'll be some people that think he should probably get like a 7 because he's 11 seconds off his teammate. He isn't that car, and he's doing everything that Red Bull need him to do. So, yeah, 8 out of 10.
And finally, Max Verstappen started first, finished first, 10 out of 10.
Moving on.
I hardly even saw him in the race, did we? It was just cruise city for Max Verstappen. I can't really comment on much more about that because we never saw him. But that usually means he's dominating. There's nothing else than a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, we might have to just cut that audio and just place it in future podcasts, because
for the next 22 races as well.
There could be a lot of these going Max first in quali, first in race, and a 10 out of 10. What more could he have done? I just think that, yeah, if it carries on, I do hope they do lose a bit of performance just so we can have a bit closer racing, because that is what this whole budget cap is meant to do. I want to see closer battles, and of course I want Max Verstappen to be champion, or Alonso at the end of it, but I don't want him to 22-0. That won't be good for anyone.
That is the end of our F1 to 10 driver ratings. What are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are, hope you enjoyed this new format, and let us know what you think to it. If you think we can improve it, any ideas and stuff are always welcome, because we're enjoying kind of having this creative freedom and trying new different things, and we hope you're enjoying it.
Thank you everybody so much for watching or listening.
The AO. Longboat 3-1 is bingo fuel. RTV for resupply. Keep it up. Enemy UAV active. Copy that. UAV online and orbiting the AO. UAV is exiting.
to the Valderas Museum of Art. Ticketing and get started.
On the run. Keep it up. Ready to deploy. UAV ready. UAV is on station. Recon online. Be advised, UAV is exiting the AO. So ready to deploy. Copy. Longbow 3-1 is on station. Copy. Counter UAV deployed. Running interference. The mission is complete. Well done. Free for all. Backhands online.
Forte. Vaffanculo, va.
Bosnia, hostile cluster mine active.
quello sempre là, quello sempre lì stai, oh, porco dio. Che pippa del cazzo, guarda questo. Dei mosso, dai, già qualcosa, ha già fatto un movimento. Stanno a prendere in culo, va. Guarda, quello sta lì dietro, che forti ragazzi, che lobby di mostri. Ali ragazzi, porco dio.
Copy. UAV orbiting the AO. Recon is online.
Beh, porco dio.
Be advised, UAV is exiting
Cavolo,
the AO.
porca madonna, non si mettono questi. Incredibile. Vabbè, da tutte le parti, porca madonna, però c'è.
Copy. UAV orbiting the AO. Recon is online. Other UAV running signal interference.
Sì. Porco dio.
Be advised, UAV is exiting the AO. Counter UAV is being fuel. RTB at this time. Copy.
Ziz, guarda che cazzo.
Hostile UAV active. Copy. Counter UAV on station. Running interference. Hostile precision airstrike. Get to cover. Got them on the Counter UAV exiting the AO.
Madonna della puttana, del Signore di Cristo Gesù bambino messo in croce. te stai sempre lì e non ti muovi. Coglione.
Bosnia svima, Bosnia svima. Hostile launch in the SAE. Hostile care package deployed. Hostile UAV overhead.
Oddio. Madonna della puttana. Vai Roberto, dietro lo scudo, va. Azziz. Azziz. Guarda che schifo che fai, porco dio, guarda che schifo che fai. Ah, questo lì. Ah, che pazienza, che pazienza, che pazienza.
Hostile cluster mine.
Madonna della puttana di Gesù bambino messo in croce.
Yeah! Baby, come on! Water clutch! Woo! That was good.
Copy. UAV orbiting the AO. Recon is online. UAV is being refueled. RTB at this time. Solid copy. Counter UAV is blocking enemy recon. Counter UAV is down.
Важня, hostiles deployed the counter UAV. Only two ahead. Hostile counter UAV overhead.
Copy that.
Counter UAV ready.
bingo fuel. RTB at this time.
So bad.
Standing by. UAV ready for tasking.
Copy that. UAV is on station. Copy. Counter UAV on station. We're here.
1 minute remaining.
Guys, what a fucking clutch again!
Secure, good
What a
fighting.
fucking clutch again! Woo! Yeah, baby! Come on! That's a fucking 3 wins right there. What a clutch.